Chapter 4: Cultural Marxism in America. Antonio Gramsci helped establish the Communist Party in Italy on the heels of the 1917 Russian Revolution, and he could be called the inventor of what we now know as cancel culture. Although sent to prison in 1926 for his communist activities, Gramsci kept writing while incarcerated until he died in prison in 1937. The communists of his day came to the conclusion that Marxist revolutions weren't spreading worldwide like Marx predicted, and which they theretofore believed would happen. Marx had predicted that the worker bees of the world would rise up and take over the government, the land, and the means of production from the evil capitalists. But when it didn't happen, the communists wondered why. Gramsci thought he had the answer. His take on it was what he called cultural hegemony. In other words, the strength of established society and institutions was so ingrained in culture that people were more or less too satisfied to rise up in revolt, and that interfered with the expectations of the Marxists. The dominant culture had established the history, stories, language, traditions, etc., which held the proletariat complacent through cultural domination. To solve this problem, Gramsci said the dominant culture should be dismantled and subordinated to a new alternative cultural hegemony. If we conflate Gramsci with current events, it's easy to see and understand what the left is doing in America when statues of heroes in our history have been torn down. Leftists and brainwashed athletes refuse to stand for the national anthem or participate in the Pledge of Allegiance. Our history itself is being attacked, recalculated, and taught in a way manufactured to fit a leftist narrative rather than as things really happened. For example, with organizations like Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and others, the left seeks to replace the traditional American narrative. They intend to take the idea of America from all men are created equal, and we're all free to think, say, and do what we want, and replace it with the idea that we're an awful country, that our history is hideous, everybody and everything, including our entire institutional system, is racist, and that the country, the culture, and the extant system must be changed. This is why radical members of academia constantly blabber about socialism being better than capitalism. It's a war for the hearts and minds of we the people. Other cultures are showing up on the radar as being more important than what they see as the dominant culture, and foreigners are being recruited to not only establish a new electorate, but to reshape the ethnic landscape and create the alternate cultural hegemony. As it becomes clearer to Americans what these people are all about and what they are trying to do to us, we come closer to rallying and defeating this growing blight on our nation and the communist revolution they are fomenting. Unfortunately, too many voters, especially the young, naive ones, still aren't getting the message. They may be the ones who prevented the red wave the Republicans predicted in the 2022 midterms and allowed the leftist Democrats to keep control of the Senate and keep senile sock puppet Joe Biden in the White House. Had Republicans managed to take control of the Senate, they could have impeached Biden and Harris, but not without 2/3 of the Senate to convict the impeached parties. We must look at their plans and actions as what they are: an attempt to destroy this country as it is so they can replace it with what the left wants it to be, with socialism ruining us and the Politburo in China high-fiving each other while doing a happy dance in the streets of Beijing. When Antifa and other radical dirtbags tear down statues of Confederate generals, Union generals, Abe Lincoln, and abolitionists, firebomb police stations, and attack people, they are on occasion arrested only to be released without charge, and or they are bailed out by other radicals, including Kamala Harris, who is either nothing more than a self-serving opportunist and political hack going whichever way winds blow in her favor, or worse, a closeted socialist if we consider her support for the Democrat Socialists' Green New Deal, Medicare for all, free education, universal basic income whether a person is willing to work or not, and more. Will Antifa become the military force of the radicals when they begin their bloody Marxist revolution like what happened in 1917 Russia? Is that what they are creating with their activism? Look closely as the left tries to rewrite our history in such ways. After all, Karl Marx is quoted as saying,
Keep people from their history, and they are easily controlled.
He also said,
Take away a nation's heritage, and they are more easily persuaded.
see what the leftists teach in critical race theory, i.e., to divide us along racial lines and intersectionality. They say Marxist socialism is better and push counterculture ideology through things like the 1619 Project, which was sponsored by the New York Times in the left-leaning press's attempt to brand America as systemically racist. All this is an attempt to anger blacks and get them to support the leftist causes. Remember the Fabian Society and Manning Johnson. And convince young, naive and malleable people that America is a horrible country and, therefore, not worth defending or perpetuating. The long game for the left is that they created in today's young voters a mindset that will eventually support their political goals. More on this concept as we go. Ironically, speaking of New York, this is where the first slaves were offloaded in America, and many households in New York owned slaves. The left also uses terms like social justice warriors to make naive young people believe their cause is just even though they aren't sure what the cause is, and to make others dissatisfied with what Antonio Gramsci labeled as the dominant cultural hegemony. The Marxists can't get people to engage in revolution against the country unless they can make targeted ethnic identities dissatisfied and angry enough to revolt. We the people must not let them win the war for the hearts and minds in America, and we must adamantly and loudly decry plans and policies promoted by leftists like those of the Democrat mayor of Washington, D.C., of Columbia, who considered the removal of the Washington Monument and the Jefferson Memorial. They know a country without a history is not a country. We must push back like the parents of Loudoun County, Virginia, who attended a school board meeting to oppose the teaching of the highly racist curriculum called critical race theory to their children. This is discussed more below. But we need to understand where some of this radical thinking is coming from. Unfortunately, it's not just a matter of thinking. It's part of a decades-old plan that is being implemented in our time and picking up speed.